Welcome to News with a View, hosted by me, John A. Costa, an expert in nothing, which qualifies me to give you the opinion, my opinion, of what's going on in the news. This is a conservative-leaning podcast. I'm a Republican, a Federalist, but not MAGA. I look at both sides of an issue and then render my verdict. Now, again, being a conservative, I will lean towards the conservative point of view. I apologize, still, pollen's horrible out there. But if I feel that the Republicans are heading into the guardrails or over the guardrails, I will say it. I have no problems with that. The Constitution, our laws, our process, our republic. We're not a democracy. We're a republic that has democratic principles built into it. All right, today is May 20th. This is episode 76. I'm not putting shows back on my playlist right away because they don't get a lot of views. I get more views on my videos and more views on my shorts. I wish shorts were able to go up on YouTube for more than 3 minutes, maybe an 8-minute short. I think it would be really very good, and I would do an 8-minute show. But instead, you have to listen to me spew my words of wisdom that can only enhance you. And for the Democrats out there, I hope to expand your tiny little minds. No, I'm only kidding, Democrats. There's plenty of good Democrats out there. And when I say Democrats, I'm talking about politicians, not my neighbors or anything like that. When I say Democrats or Republicans, I'm talking about politicians. And we could all go and agree that politicians, it's like holding jelly in your hands. All right. Today, I'm just sticking with one topic, hoping to keep it down to a minimum because I'm very busy today. And I take time out of my day to do the research that goes into what I speak about. I do not use emotion. I use facts. Now, of course, the facts as I see them, but no. Facts, actual facts. We're going to talk about Donald Trump, private citizen, who filed a suit against the IRS. All right? And this was a suit filed by Donald Trump, the defendants, of course, his family, and the Trump organization. So it's just not Donald Trump, it's blah, 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 blah. Alleging that the IRS failed to safeguard his and his family's and Trump's organization tax filings from unauthorized disclosure. Now, we all know that that has happened. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And now the suit, which doesn't exist anymore, what was the process of the actions taken? So when a legal dispute between a payee, let's say, or a filer into the IRS the IRS uses, and this is a legal dispute, when the IRS uses a special tax division of the Department of Justice. It is a division of the IRS that works with the Department of Justice. They are all part of it. It is the Department of Justice, but it only deals with the IRS. And the DOJ's job is to mount a defense for the IRS if a case goes to trial. The IRS does not litigate directly. They don't, lawyer from the IRS. No, it's Department of Justice, Special Tax Division. So when you file a civil suit against the IRS, it goes to the Chief General Counsel office, and the GLS acts as the liaison who investigates the facts, interviews employees, and gathers all the records for the Department of Justice to defend the IRS's position on the actions that they have taken. So, if it's going to go to trial, the IRS Special Tax Division, through the IRS General Counsel, the Department of Justice does not interview those persons at that point in time. The IRS does the investigation, gives all the information to the Department of Justice Special Tax Division inside the DOJ, and they formulate a defense for the IRS. So if it goes to trial, they got all their ducks in order, they got all their information, and off they go. But before going to trial, the Special Tax Division can, through an independent office of appeals, has the authority to settle disputes based on the hazard of litigation. So, meaning if the IOA, Independent Office of Appeals, this is where it goes through, feels the case would be lost in front of a judge or ruled against the IRS, they can settle the case as not setting a legal precedent. So if it was one of these crazy off-the-wall things, but the person could prove to a judge, now that judge, you do not sit, there is no jury. And this is where, we have a criminal court, a civil court, and then you have a tax court. People don't realize that. And that you don't get a jury, you don't get all that good stuff. So where you could convince a jury, of your woes. Judge is just going to be there. He is a tax judge. He's going to look at it and make a decision. But if the Independent Office of Appeal feels that, hey, there's a good chance we're going to lose this case, let's try to settle with the individual. Now, they do that in 90% of the cases. Very few cases go all the way up into a legal proceeding. And this is also with the Department of Justice as a whole. Very few cases go. And the cases that do go where you go, I'm going to take it, I want to go, boom, boom, and I say 98% of those cases, the government wins. And if the government isn't willing to make a deal with you, chances are very good that you're going to lose that case. It's very rare that you win a case against the government when you go toe-to-toe. Very rare. So, in this case where an employee's action or a contractor caused the suit, the agency's general legal services, and I said that before, GLS, handles the response, and the DOJ provides legal representation for an employee being sued, and so that their actions are deemed to be protected, meaning in the course of their job. They had a legitimate reason to do what they did, and the Department of Justice goes, no, they didn't do anything wrong, we're going to defend you, but you don't have to worry about, it's not qualified immunity, but you are going to be represented out of the government's pocket. You don't have to do that personally. As long as they rule that you acted in accordance to the procedures. The reason they try to settle with cases where they know it could go like this, or we don't have to go this way. You say we owe you $1 million, and we're willing to go and look at these, and we'll take that off. We won't go that. We'll drop the penalty. We'll do this and that, or you don't have to do this, and you don't owe anything, and it's gone. But once the case goes in front of a judge, the IRS can no longer authorize a settlement to the action. The settlement then shifts solely to the Department of Justice. So the IRS then loses whatever control, because now that special tax division of the Department of Justice is in play, and one can't influence the other once the ball is out of the mitt and going towards the plate. That's it. Wherever it goes, it goes. Since the case in this matter already had a criminal conviction against the employee/contractor, and the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration already took remedies to bring actions against the individuals. Now remember, during their investigation, you bring a suit and they go, well, that's pretty serious, we're going to investigate this. When it was not pointed out during the suit, but in 2024, when Trump had said, hey, my taxes are all over the front page and everyone else, what the heck? How'd that happen? How'd you release that? Well, we didn't release it. Someone leaked it. Well, how did it leak? Don't you have safeguards against that? Well, and then we don't know what happened yet, and we can't say anything because we have this person, Charles Littlejohn, and we can't say anything because it hasn't gone to trial yet. And so in 2024, it went to trial, and they got a conviction. And this individual, Mr. Littlejohn, was found guilty, pleaded guilty, whatever he did, sentenced to 5 years in prison and a fine, which was exactly what the law says happens if you violate your oath of the job. You know, you knew what the rules were. You weren't allowed to do what you did. You did it anyway. Now, we're going to take this to the maximum. It was most 5 years. I think that they were wrong with that they want 5 years. You could have tried each taxpayer's file and gotten this guy 1,000,000 years. But that wasn't the thing. That was just now, let's clear this, get this under the fence, and we'll bury it. The settlement then with Trump was a logical course of action for them to take, because it was easy for Trump's legal team to go, was it in fact a breach of your own internal codes, your IRM? And that's the internal, manual inside the IRS. So they proved that this individual had violated, 26 uniform, code, the USC subsection 7213, and as such, boom, that's what we charged him with. And it was done. He released the information. There was no doubt that he released the information. The courts were satisfied, and he was found guilty. So now, the IRS, you could take that criminal case and point towards the IRS has already said they convicted this guy, that he leaked information out that he was not supposed to do. And now it's civil, and the president goes, well, you should have stopped him from doing that. And the IRS goes, listen, we understand. But this guy took it, we didn't know, and when we did, boy, we acted as quickly as we could to stop it. And of course, Trump's saying, no, you didn't. You didn't stop it. And all your rhetoric in the newspapers about releasing my tax information should have made you super vigilant that no hanky-panky would happen. And you didn't. You failed to secure my information, my family's information, and my business's information. You failed. And it would be impossible for the IRS to say otherwise. You got a conviction. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was done. So, was it January of 2026, Trump filed a lawsuit. Now, there's a 2-year statutes of limitations where you can go after the government, even though they can come after you, I think 5 to 7 years if, they find a mistake on your taxes. Most of the times it's 5 years. And I'll go into a little bit longer how they can circumvent that 5 years. So now everyone screamed, when the suit went in January 29th, before he was President Trump, he was Donald J. Trump, the civilian, a citizen, but with no official power, right? Can we all agree on that? Which is not really the case, because 22 he was the power. But the suit was filed. It was prepared way before that. It wasn't done overnight. And they knew it was coming. The problem, and we'll go into that everyone seemed to have was, how did they get to 10 billion? Why didn't he make it 10 trillion? Why didn't he make it $1? Just to prove his case. Well, there is a statute. The statute allows for $1,000 per unauthorized view of your taxes. So in the newspapers, just add up all the subscriptions across the United States and world, and you get to $10 billion. Okay? And that was allowed under, again, 26 U.S.C. subsection 6103 and subsection 7213. Now, what do I know? I go through everything. I look. I go online. I research, and I look. Now, the liberal media and many Democrats, politicians, and I'm sure plenty of Democrats, and probably a handful of Republicans, feel that Donald Trump could not bring a civil case against the IRS, and that it was a conflict of interest. The truth is, he had every right to file a suit as a private citizen and as president. Didn't matter. The two pass one another. If you're the president, you are a citizen. If you're a citizen, you can be the president. Falling under the guidelines of what's allowed. You know, you could be a citizen and not be president because you were naturalized. You weren't born here. So, you know, when I say that, I'm already putting that caveat out there. So when someone, you know, is right, oh, that's not true. You're an idiot. No. I put the caveat out there that meets the criteria to be the president. And I spoke about the statutes of limitations within the IRS framework and within the legal system in which you can make a claim. Now, we said that the case had, you know, with Little John had already been concluded. The case was found that this person acted, you know, in a way that he shouldn't have. Where the IRS would have to prove is that he acted independently. And if he acted independently, how could he get through all these safeguards at the IRS? Who else has he done this to? Whose other records did he touch? And they knew exactly how, because electronics. So, this case then goes to, in Florida, filed in Florida, goes to a district judge. Going to file the suit. And the case was reviewed by Judge Kathleen Williams of the Southern District of Florida. But she had a problem with it. How can the head of the executive branch sue a branch that he has complete control over? So in reality, he could find for himself and negotiate the settlement in front of a mirror to himself. Was the hypothetical that she was putting out there. And she wanted to hear the legal arguments on that from Trump's attorneys. And again, it is not an unfair or unreasonable question, because there was there is a mechanism in place, and I went through that, but that these other people in charge of the IRS, they could make that decision. Now, the conflict would be is if Trump went to them and said, they go, listen, we go to your legal team. We're not going to you, Mr. President. We're going to go to your legal team. And we go to him, listen, we're willing to make a settlement here. But there's no way we can give $10 billion. So we come up on, $1,760,000,000, $1,776,000,000, 1776. Right. And we'll put that into a fund that if people make claim against us and we look at it, that we can make restitutions and we can make settlements with them. But you have to drop your lawsuit. And we'll set up this fund, and we'll put policies in place that that this can't happen again. Now, there can be no doubt that a potential conflict of interest could be raised. You're just going to be. It is a valid suggestion or concern. Now, they could have said, these are the administrators over here, and this is Trump over here, and unless Trump has told them, you will settle with me, or I put your hand on the chopping block. And again, we don't know that didn't happen. I would tend to believe it did not, unless you could show me proof otherwise. But since this lawsuit was in the process of being generated to be presented, it shows that it was well in thought maybe even before the election. I don't know. I don't know that. I could not find when that when the birth of it or the conception of it was done. I'll find it. I just didn't have time to dig deep enough into that. But what has mattered is that the president is a citizen and he can file suit against an executive branch controlled division or administration. Because there was an adverse and an adversarial dispute that existed. The case of unauthorized release of private personal tax information, like I said, was proven already in a criminal case. And the information released came directly from the IRS, whose duty was to protect taxpayers' data. It wasn't done. The IRS decided to settle the matter if Donald Trump dropped his suit, which he did. And the action prevented a potential constitutional crisis, which I would have said definitely would have happened. And it might needed to be happened. It probably should have happened in our checks and balances, because you didn't have a positive and a negative here where they could go at each other like this. You had a positive and a positive, or a negative and a negative, and it just seemed out of place. And again, the IRS, had statutes of limitations on what you can do, and they had statutes personally of what they can do with you, except in the instances of fraud. They could look back almost forever, but they have to be reasonable, and it's usually 5 to 7 years, but there is no hard case on that. Donald, part of the, and I said this is where I had some problems with, where Donald Trump said that part of the settlement is the IRS cannot go back and look at any of his prior taxes again, prior to now, and try to find fraud. That's a bit much. That's a bit much. Though, what he's trying to do is have the IRS give him a pardon. Without him having to go and give himself a pardon, which he can do if he wanted to do that. So he's stopping, he wants the IRS to be prevented from them going and finding a mistake and then categorizing that as fraud. Not a mistake, but deliberate intention to defraud the United States government of tax money. And he would have to go to court and fight that, and it could take millions and years. And then if they find that he, did do fraud, that, but then it's a criminal matter. So he doesn't want to go through that dance again. And it does pose an ethical question. But I think there's a reasonable explanation, and I just gave it, on why he would want that. He has proven that they have come after him in the past. They have. Look what they just did. You don't think there's other people in there that would be ready to pounce on me? So I think that when you look at it in those terms, it's reasonable. I had an acquaintance, don't know him long enough to be friends, but casual, nice, difference of opinion, who said this would be no different with what Trump Department of Justice is doing to James Comey, over the seashell incident, which is much as he said to do about nothing. Not really. Not really. And what I tried to explain to this individual, that the seashell incident won't be the nexus, or won't be why Comey would be on trial. It will be for lying to federal agents, or to be deceitful and to purposely lead them away. Misinformation. He just happened to walk upon that seashell. Really? And you post it because you were so enamored with it, and you laughed and you thought it was a joke, and then you said you didn't know what 86 meant. Right? And they have it on record he knew exactly what 86 meant because he had used it in meetings. They have agents who will testify that he exactly knew what 86 meant. So he lied to a federal agent. Why? Comey's mistake was his arrogance. He should have had a lawyer with him, even though he was a great lawyer. And he won't take that away from them. A smart legal guy. But he spoke to them without a lawyer being present. And he thought he could, give them answers. That didn't go too well, sir. You did the same thing to a certain colonel. Yeah. Karma, baby. Karma. And you could say, and they go, this is selective. They go, yeah, speak to Martha Stewart about it. Yeah. He was going, this would never happen to a Republican. I go, yeah, speak to Martha Stewart about it. And there were other people. Lots of people. All right? And when the feds come after you and they're going to go, one of the charges that they'll put there is that you misled agents. And that will also be a charge. And that goes up on the wall, sticks on the wall. All right? So, critics will argue that the president ordered the IRS to settle the lawsuit for personal gain. They're going to make this, they're going to fly with it, and, of course it's not true. Congress can request full disclosure from Department of Justice officials only through its oversight power and investigate the legality of the settlement and how the settlement agreement would work, meaning the language in there and whatever policies are in there that, the IRS has agreed to in the settlement. What happens if those procedures are found to be a conflict of the law, or, then what happens to the settlement? Because one part goes, the whole thing goes. So I do feel that Congress does have the right to, through its oversight power of tax money going out, to request through the Department of Justice exactly how this whole thing worked. Whose authority? Was that authority correct? Did those people have the authority to do this? And those are all legitimate questions. There's nothing wrong with that. That isn't being, I'm devoted to this party or I'm devoted to that party. You're devoted to this. So if Congress has the right of oversight, have at it. Have at it. But only a federal court could rule against the settlement, but they would have to prove that the DOJ bypassed its statutory authority. So it would have to be looked at and then gone to a court and acted upon. Now, the 93 congressmen sent the thing to the Justice Department telling them this because they got wind of it. They knew this was coming. But that they demand that it be looked at. Well, there's a procedure on how to do that. And I'm sure they will do it. There's no doubt in my mind that there won't be a hearing on this. And it might not go anywhere, but they'll have their say, and they'll have their snippets on television, which is allowed. They can do that. It's not a problem. The problem is when they misrepresent and lie. And I think this was more of the president saying, you're not going to do this to anyone else and think that you're going to get away with it. Now, we saw the IRS used by Obama against Tea Party people. And the Department of Justice stepped in and told him, yeah, don't do that. And they gave Obama a walk. Obama could have been impeached for what he authorized was going on. But the idea that a president can't bring suit against a federal agency wouldn't hold up in the Supreme Court because he's a citizen. Now, if there's no mechanism in place by Congress to prevent that, or say any civil suit filed by the president against an agency that he has, blah, 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 and he is seeking personal restitution or asking for restitution to others, that it must go through a third party, or it must go through a special committee set up with Congress, where you have 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 1 independent. Right? And that must go through them. But there isn't anything like that. Because when there was the idea of the president filing a civil suit, the idea was that it was over policies, and if the offending agency would tweak up their policies and procedures and goals, that would be good enough, or that the president could fire the head of that agency and things. That's what it all falls under. Is the president does have the authority to control everything under the executive branch. And you'll have people arguing, well, why didn't the Department of Justice just let this play out in its court system? And my personal belief with that, and I'm going to finish this up, 45 minutes of this. I knew it was going to be long. But is that if it went into the court, even though it's a judge, no jury, no anyone else, you'd be able to depose people. You could do that. And it could come out that this guy, Little John, was acting in cahoots with others who were acting in cahoots with others. And it could be a very bad day for the Biden administration. That everything that Donald Trump has said about them would be true. They're crooks. Look what they did. They tried to railroad me. They tried to do this. They tried to do that. They did this. This guy was working with that guy who was working with that guy who was working with that guy who works for the president. And they all knew. So the IRS could turn around and go, and again, remember I said the hazards of litigation? Maybe it's just a little better for everyone if we do this. Can you deny that? Could you say that that is beyond the veil of possibilities? I don't think you could do that. I don't think you could do that. I have questions about the settlement. I'm not, I was kind of taken back that in 5.5 months of this, that they come up with settlement. Seems a little quick. Because we all know what it takes to fight the government. So was this the government, inside the government, telling them to settle up? People have every right to ask that question and get an answer. They'll never believe the answer, but they have every right to ask for an answer and to ask for an explanation, to look at it. And the people that gave it the sniff test and the smell test and everything else and the taste test, were they authorized to have a taste? Those questions should be asked, and they should be answered, and they should be verified. That's not being disloyal to your party or being un-American or anything else. That is exactly what's allowed. And if it's allowed, have at it. Now, I think the judge who was questioning whether or not it was valid was way off the page. That was well beyond her pay grade to make that decision, or to even make that request. But she probably did that out of, looking at it and going, yeah, I'd approve it, but you got to show me. And the information was already there. There wasn't an adversary approach to it. There wasn't adverse consequences of this person's actions and the department's actions and their lack of keeping data safe. The question was, can the president sue? And the very simple answer is yes, they can. Yes, they can. But it is, in theory, like suing yourself. very sticky. Can you sue yourself? You might. You could. You think about it. On the civil, you could. All right, everyone. Please be safe. Please think about giving to a charity. Charity needs a lot of help. Just make sure that charity is a bona fide charity. Give them 1776. I might start making donations like that. That might be real interesting. But please check, make sure it's a bona fide organization. And if you're not interested in that or you don't feel comfortable with that, I could certainly understand. Please think about giving to a food bank. Food, they always need food. They also need money because they need to help people right at that moment and that have direct impacts. They could do it. Just make sure that's a bona fide organization too. Say a prayer. Prayer does work. And you don't have to be part of any organization to pray. You just have to be open for the response. Because the response of your prayer might be right in front of you. But if you don't know how to look, sometimes it's not going to bonk you on the head. Think about that. And with that, everyone, be safe, be well. I don't think I'll do another show today. Possibly if something really big comes up. I haven't looked at the news. I haven't set any of my things for instantaneous reporting. So everyone, this is 52 minutes and about 45 seconds. Everyone, be safe, be well, as I fade to black.